Hey, it's Adrian and welcome to another episode. I've got all sorts of different subjects I want to cover today rather than just doing one subject per video like we have done in the past. So we're going to dive right in. Normally, as you know, I'd like to film this in the garden, but we are experiencing the wet season right now in Wales, and that ties in beautifully with our new God of Wales, Mark Drayford, who has decided that because coronavirus is particularly virulent in Wales, that we can only go to pubs and restaurants as long as we sit outside. So I can see that going very, very well. And we can all sit there and be soggy and rust, because you certainly don't go old in Wales, you just rust out. Anyway, so stepping back into this, the very first part of this video, I want to talk to you about something which is very interesting. Two things actually, and I'm going to read to you part of an email that was sent to me by the guy that actually designed those really clever posters we had a while back. So he says, I've attached a poster that I did a while back when I determined right at the start of this that if absolutely nobody watched the TV, listened to the radio, read the papers or used social media, then the virus would never have come into being. This week my thoughts were reinforced by the UK column who stated that because parts of Myanmar, which used to be Burma, had an internet ban, then those parts did not have or experience COVID-19. And I thought that was kind of interesting, so I pulled up this map to have a look exactly where Myanmar is, and it's right next to Laos, and it's right next to Vietnam, and it's right next to China. So let's have a quick look at Worldometer just to do with Laos and Vietnam, because something interesting is happening there. And if you look at the total deaths for Laos, you'll see there are none. And if you look at the total deaths for Vietnam, you will also see that there are none. Now, isn't that interesting, especially when you look at the top edge, because Myanmar, Laos and Vietnam have quite a long border with China. So how can that be? Now, I'm not going to answer that question, but I would like you to leave it in there just to have a little think about, let it kind of ferment, if you will, a little bit, and stew and do its thing. Now, this points me back to a native Indian tribe who did not have a word for depression, and as such, nobody experienced depression. I've also decided that those who are entertaining the existence of COVID-19 and are acting in accordance with the rules being dished out have unwittingly been entered into a cult group. These types of groups have strict rules, work on fear, and usually require you to wear certain items of clothing, style hair in a particular way, wear certain jewelry, have certain handshakes, etc. in order to identify themselves to each other. With the face masks, it becomes easier to see who has entered into the ruling of this cult and who hasn't. Now, I just want to step out very quickly and just have a look at Wikipedia for some entries on cults. In modern English, a cult is a social group that is defined by its unusual religious, spiritual or philosophical beliefs, or by its common interest in a particular personality, object or goal. And then if you look further down, it says something interesting. In the sociological classifications of religious movements, a cult is a social group with socially deviant or novel beliefs and practices. So it's interesting, isn't it? You have novel beliefs and you have a novel virus. And that just sprung to mind while I was reading it. Anyway, I cannot believe that people have also been willingly giving their details to pubs just to have a beer. It's like that thing with kids, isn't it? Where a parent to punish them by taking away their treats for enough time that the child would do anything to be able to have their rights back. This is so sad, simply because it's basic psychology which the majority of people are unaware of. Furthermore, the guy on UK column midweek commented that it was conditioning like Pavlov. This actually was wrong, as Pavlov did not work with punishment and reward, but rather he worked with association, tuning forks and food. The guy that did the punishment reward stuff was B.F. Skinner, who used operant conditioning. All of this is also detailed in the book Perfected Mind Control by J.K. Ellis, aka How to Start a Cult. It's on my bookshelf and I must read it again and apply it to the current situation. But what I have flicked through for 5 minutes today proves that this is a cult extending membership to the majority. What else do cult groups also do? Mass suicide? And then there's a link to the UFO cult group. Sounding familiar by the way things are panning out? Another book, which you may like, which goes in line with my second poster, was one I read a fair few years ago while on holiday in Crete, like that's going to happen again. It's called Virus of the Mind, and it is about how they can help you. It also discusses how they are used by the media for more sinister purposes. It's by a guy called Richard Brody. So the question is, are you enjoying the new cult that appears to be unfolding around us? Because to me, I think that comment that he made is certainly very relevant and very thought-provoking. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was this business in Leicester where they had this sudden increase in cases. And again, they're talking cases, which is irrelevant. It's deaths that are very relevant, which discussed in another video. And I did come across something which I'm sure some of you will have seen and some of you may not have seen, that they increased the number of testing stations by 7 or 8, I think it was, in Leicester. So of course you're going to come across more. And a lot of it is asymptomatic, which again makes no sense. That would be like having an asymptomatic hangover, which means you haven't got a hangover. Or I had an asymptomatic headache the other day because I didn't have a headache. You know, it's mind-numbingly odd the lengths they're going to try and drop stuff in here, and people are accepting it. You know, you're either sick or you're not. And one of the other subscribers to this channel, the guy that wrote that really interesting list out or document out about his take on health and viruses and stuff like that, he pointed something out to do with the testing. So here's a test sheet that someone's had done. And there's a range on here which beggars belief. You see, when I write code, one full stop, comma, semicolon or space in the wrong place completely destroys the way it operates and brings it to a grinding halt. So how is it then that you can have this very precise test, which we know is completely flawed? Well, if you look here, there's a range, and at the first part of the range, you've definitely not got it. In the middle part of the range, you might have it. And at the end part of the range, you probably do have it. And by the way, if you fall into the middle part of the range and the test costs 80 quid, if you are in that range, then you're encouraged to come back and be tested again. Or if you disagree with the test, you're encouraged to pay for another test. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. This is so inaccurate. It's not science. I don't know what it is. Is it religion? Maybe it's a cult. I don't know. But it's just craziness to think that you have all these ranges. Unless someone wants to correct me on that, but you're going to struggle. Because to me, you've either got something or you haven't. None of this wishy-washy middle ground nonsense, blah, blah, can't make my mind up. It's craziness. It doesn't make any sense. And yet they're using all of this stuff to try and convince you and I that this thing's even real. It's gone beyond madness. Right, so what I want to do next is just show you a couple of memes which are really good. One is the evolution of Bill Gates, and the next one is about masks. And I'll put some music over that and give you a little time to read it. Do stick around to the end because I'm going to play then a video. It's extremely powerful, I believe. Now there is some reference to guns in there and that may rub somebody the wrong way, but just if you take the spirit of the message where people are actually realizing what has to happen, we have to take responsibility for ourselves and claim that for ourselves and stop even engaging with these illegitimate third parties that think they have the power. They are absolutely terrified at this point. I'm convinced of that because they take power from us. They need fear and they feed off that energy. They need compliance and they feed off that. And if we simply remove that, we don't have to go and petition for it because that in itself is ridiculous. That's like saying, well, we recognize you have it. Can we have it back, please? No, you've never had it in the first place and you certainly aren't going to get it now. So I thought I'd like to play that for you. Enjoy the memes, enjoy that. You guys are amazing. If you want to support me, I'm on BitChute. No. If you want to support me, I'm on Patreon and Liberapay. And if you want to see the other videos, you can find them on BitChute and Brighteon and Libri. And if you want to go to my blog, you can bookmark that page and you'll find links to all the videos on there. I'm actually going to set up the blog or a separate blog just for the videos to separate it away from the book site. And that's going to be on fortheloveoftruth.co.uk, which was suggested to me by another subscriber that I've got to know over these last few months, and I really appreciate the suggestion. It's certainly a lot more positive than we don't like being lied to. And that's it for this video. I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
in freedom forever. The Universal Declaration of the Individual. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for a person to dissolve the political bands which have chained them in subservience
to a non-consensual government, and to assume among their fellow humans
the separate and equal station to which their self-ownership entitles them,
a decent respect to the opinions of mankind
requires that they should declare the causes that impel them to the separation. I hold these truths to be self-evident.
I hold these truths to be self-evident.
I hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all rational beings are created equal.
That all rational beings are created equal.
That all rational beings are created equal. Whether endowed by nature or their creator, they possess free will.
The ability to conceptualize and actualize a preferred state.
and a capacity for agency, self-determination, and reciprocity.
For agency, self-determination, and reciprocity.
A respect for which requires mutual agreement to hold one's consent sacrosanct and inviolate.
That from this respect flow unalienable rights, among which are life,
Life,
liberty,
liberty,
and self-ownership.
that to secure these rights, no government,
no person or group of people
which violate the consent of another
may be suffered to exist.
whenever any such entity becomes destructive of these ends,
It is the right of the person to withdraw their consent, defend against, and abolish it.
and abolish it.
and abolish it.
Mankind's ability to suffer injustice.
Seemingly infinite when faced with danger, nourishes well these governments that stand to attack me for mine own safety.
Their centuries-long histories of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably more involuntary power, evinces their true nature of absolute despotism.
It is my right.
It is my right.
It is my right
It is my right to throw off such a government,
to throw off such government,
To choose to suffer their evils no longer, and to provide new guards for my future security.
such has been the patient suffering of myself.
And such is now the necessity which constrains me.
to abolish their former systems of involuntary government.
Involuntary government.
The history of these governments is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations.
All having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over me and my property.
In evidence of this, let the following facts be submitted to a candid world.
That some of the tyrannical evils I have suffered under be known to all. They have forbidden me to freely and peacefully associate with and disassociate from other humans of my choosing in whatever means I deem appropriate.
Both in business and matrimony.
They have ignored and trampled down my consent in all matters in which I may find myself the minority or the sole dissenter,
Affording no capacity to opt not be a part of their edicts.
They, absent any existing victim, as a matter of course,
Threaten, accost, extort, rob, injure
And even murder innocent humans
innocent humans,
where no damaged party is to be found.
They, in the name of protecting children, do frequently intrude on their childhoods.
and even kidnap them from their parents and homes without severe cause, giving them to strangers,
and leaving little recourse to their rightful caretakers.
They have twisted the good nature of the very people capable of helping others by conducting a mass extortion.
Mass extortion.
A mass extortion upon the productive, and claiming to do so in those victims' names.
Their welfare.
Their welfare uses the resources of some to buy political power from others, while actually helping very few.
All in violation.
Of individual consent.
In violation of individual consent.
They, on pain of loss of livelihood,
Force voluntary association between myself and those
and those that would employ me,
Those that would be employed by me, and those that would form unions or choose to remain free agents.
this intolerable force,
this intolerable force
They make a matter of course for employment relationships.
They, being unsatisfied in their tyranny here where I live,
march around the globe, grinding up human life as if it were valueless,
Their militaries creating
creating new enemies
creating new enemies that hate me,
that hate me instead of them.
That hate me instead of them. And then in the ultimate insult,
And then in the ultimate insult, claim that all they do is for my safety and freedom.
they, having the hubris
To place upon me rules regarding certain peaceful actions and property,
Make sins out of them.
make sins out of them,
punishing, robbing, caging, and even murdering any,
who dare defy their improper fiat.
their every prohibition without a victim, every ban without damaged property, all infringements.
Upon the right of one to own one's self.
They, through the extortion that they name taxation, have so thoroughly, forcefully interfered
Have so thoroughly, forcefully interfered in every single peaceful interaction and transaction
in every single peaceful interaction and transaction taken through the course of time,
That proper restitution has become utterly incalculable,
the damages and the criminal violations of sovereignty
nearly infinite.
nearing infinite.
my mere existence indebts me to no one. They, unable to be other than despotic, falsely claim rightful control over my ability to peacefully travel the world. They will attack me for attempting to do so without their permission or for using means outside their approved channels. They forcefully
prevent me from obtaining security, safety, and protection outside their monopoly of abusive and dangerous law enforcers.
their monopoly of abusive and dangerous law enforcers.
They establish rules by fiat that control my trade associations with those outside arbitrary lines on a map.
And euphemize and refrain theft as tariffs.
They have captured and do wrongfully control things so intimate in their nature so as to boggle the mind.
The education of our very own children isn't even free from or safe from their violent intrusions and forced oversight.
They, having no self-restraint or decency,
Having no self-restraint or decency, have a list of substances for which, if I peacefully place inside or around my person,
they will attack, rob, cage, or murder me.
cage or murder me.
To add insult to vicious injury, the law enforcers that mete out these inhumane punishments
Are touted as heroes.
are touted as heroes.
Are touted as heroes.
Touting self-proclaimed higher purposes, they routinely, in the open and without remorse, do capture and steal property of peaceful people in the name of community
Through euphemisms for evil,
They call eminent domain and asset forfeiture.
eminent domain, and asset forfeiture.
through controls upon the very earth itself, they have managed little other than the plundering of the seas,
The ravaging of the coasts,
the destruction of the forests, and while proclaiming their unending intentions to the opposite, the continued defiling of the very air we breathe.
while failing to achieve their stated goals, they have retarded the progress
That free commerce and innovation offer peaceful individuals.
They, so detailed in their control over my life, rob and attack me for using my own resources to create structures on my own property without submitting to their approval, to their snake's nest of rules for how it should be done, and paying those they force to license themselves to inspect my work once it's done. They listen to my private conversations.
They listen to my private conversations. They spy on my private communications. They hijack devices I own without limit or recourse.
My expectation of privacy is completely disregarded.
They capture entire professions such that I cannot obtain vital services of lawyers, doctors,
Professors, electricians, plumbers, optometrists, or even that as simple as a barber.
that does not bow before licensing, review, and controlling boards of the government.
Interfering constantly in what should be unfettered and unbiased opinions and labor I wish to pay for.
Finally, even their system for resolving disputes about their laws and their accusations of crimes is an utter failure by any measure.
Justice is far too expensive, and even when properly funded, still rarely found.
They use threats of extreme punishment to bargain for fast capitulations, admitting even false guilt. Worse still, while preventing me from choosing another system of justice, theirs grants de facto immunity
to their own agents, law enforcers, politicians, and other friends of the court.
Even when they stand accused of the most heinous crimes against humanity. Murder and rape are no exception.
In every stage of these oppressions,
In every stage of these oppressions,
In every stage of these oppressions, I have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms.
in the most humble terms,
in the most humble terms, my repeated petitions have been answered only by
repeated injury.
Only by repeated injury.
A ruler, by definition, may find no free people under their rule.
may find no free people under their rule, and no government lacking my consent is fit nor just in their power.
No government lacking my consent is fit nor just in their power.
Is fit nor just in their power.
Nor have I been wanting in attentions to those that still support this government. I have informed them that their control violates my consent. I have warned them that their legislature bears no rightful jurisdiction over me.
No rightful jurisdiction over me.
I have informed them that their control violates my consent. I have warned them that their legislature
bears no rightful jurisdiction over me.
I have reminded them of the nature of my freedom and right to exist without violent controls being placed upon me.
I have appealed to their sense of justice and magnanimity,
and I have begged them to exempt me from their usurpations without demanding that they disband their own way of conducting themselves,
which constantly interfere in my connections and associations.
They too have been deaf to the voice of justice.
They too have been deaf to the voice of justice,
to the voice of justice and consanguinity. I must therefore
acquiesce in the necessity which denounces my separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind,
enemies in war, in peace friends.
I, therefore, being the sole proprietor of my mind and body,
being the sole proprietor of my mind and body,
being the sole proprietor of my mind and body,
the sole proprietor of my mind and body,
being the sole proprietor of my mind and body, appealing to the rational minds of the world for the rectitude of my intentions,
do in my name and by my sovereign authority,
do in my name and by my sovereign authority,
do in my name and by my sovereign authority, solemnly publish and declare
that this person is and of right ought to be,
that this person is and of right ought to be,
this person is and of right ought to be free and independent.
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 That I am absolved of all allegiance to this government
and any other involuntary system or structure of control and regulation.
And that all political connection between myself and the state
is and ought to be.
Is and ought to be.
Totally dissolved.
Totally dissolved.
Totally dissolved.
Totally dissolved.
Totally dissolved. And that as a free and independent person,
I have full power to protect myself using necessary means,
contract with others, establish commerce, and to do all other acts
and things which independent people may of right do.
Which independent people may of right do.
And for the support of this declaration, I agree and pledge that by my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor,
I will hold sacrosanct
agency, consent, and property of others.
Likewise expecting, requiring, and demanding
that the same be afforded me.
I own myself.
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 Own myself.
I lead myself.
I lead myself.
I lead myself.
I lead myself.
I own myself. I lead myself.